So the ones we wrote yesterday. So this is the last problem I wanted to finish off of that page. Okay. It's under, I don't care where, it's under the factoring, but just put it where you have some room, okay? Okay. So the first thing you want to do when you're doing this is you have to get it set equal to 0. So I want to move the cosine over here. So I get this. Okay, everybody take out your earbuds. All of them. Is it on? Okay. Yes, if they're not on. Isaac, take out your earbud and I'd be happy to answer. Thank you. You complain about his hair, you traumatize him, he moves all the way to the back now, and now you're whining that he's in the back. Jeez. All right. Yes. Okay. So I move the cosine to the other side. So now the next thing I'm looking, now that it's equal to 0, when I look down the line, they're all sines except the cosine squared, right? So that's not going to work. So what I do know, and probably the one that you absolutely know and remember, is cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x equals 1. It's probably the only one you remember, but at least you know this one by now, hopefully. You do? Squared. All right. So, okay, can we finish this? So, here I have a minus cosine squared, right? So when I look at this, bless you, this is a positive cosine squared, but I need a negative. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it to this side, right? Because I need a negative. So I'm going to move this. It's negative cosine squared of x. So what do I have to do with the 1? I need to move it to the other side, right? So I get sine squared of x minus 1 equals negative cosine squared of x. So now I can take this and plug it in for my negative cosine squared of x. So I'm going to get so you get this big old long mess, right? What's going to cancel out? The 1s. But how many sine squareds do I have? 2. So I have 2 sine squared of x minus sine. Now we can, what? I don't know where you are because you spent this much time getting your paper out. Well, everybody else is paying attention and they know I crossed those out. So what do these have in common? A sine. So if I take out a sine, so now we're going to set each of these equal to 0. So I want to know, where is the sine 0? So that's, where is the y value 0? Pi and 0, right? So these are 0 and pi. And this one, if I add the 1 and divide by 2, stop eating you're distracting everybody while you're doing that, Cardarius. Like now you're in the front, and even I can't think. I'm thinking, where is the sign a half? All right. So, where is the sign a half? It's at this one, right? Pi over 6. I heard pi over 3 and pi over 6. Pi over 6. So, if I get, this is pi over 6, right? Now, the sign at pi over 6 is a positive y. Where else do I get a positive y? The y, right? So we want the second quadrant, which is going to be pi minus pi over 6. So that's going to give me 5 pi over 6. Okay, does that make sense? All right, get out your green paper from yesterday. Where's the homework paper? Would you just get it out? Okay, if you left it at home, just write on another piece of paper. All right. All right. So, first of all, if I look at number 3, how am I going to solve that? We can equal to 0. Can I take the square root? So if I take the square, so you can do it either way. You can either factor it by subtracting the 1, or you can take the square root, and you get the same answer either way. If I take the square root on both sides, here's what you have to remember. So this gives me the sign of x, but on the other side, the 1 is a plus or minus 1. Because when you take the square root, we don't know if it's a plus or minus. So where is the sign a plus or minus? Where? The plus or minus 1. So at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So those are your answers. You feel like it's two different things? Okay. So I want to do another one. Let's go to number 14. So unlike number 3, where we could have factored that, the 3 is not going to factor. So I'm going to add the 3 to the other side. Savannah. So when I add the 3 to the other side, what do I do to get rid of the squared now? And when I square root, what do I get on the plus or minus? Because otherwise you get it wrong. So you have plus or minus the square root of 3. So somebody who has the blue notes where we wrote this down, tell me the right answer. Where is, so x is, the tangent is equal to the square root of 3 at pi over 3. But I want a plus and a minus. So if I look, the pi over 3 gives me the positive. Where's the other positive one? In the third quadrant. And how do I get to the third quadrant? Pi plus pi over 3, right? So this one is pi plus pi over 3. And how do I get to the second quadrant for a negative? Pi minus pi over 3. And then this one is 2 pi minus pi over 3. So that's how you get your 4 answers. You're going to have 4 answers. Okay, let's finish this one. Why do I get 4 answers? It's positive or negative. And so if it's positive here, it's also positive here. If it's negative here, it's also negative there. 4 places. Okay, what was your question, Angie? Yes. Any other questions? Yes. No, because if I end up with a plus or minus square root of 3 over 2, that's 4 answers. So,
the one where you do pi minus pi over 3, wouldn't that give you a positive answer? Yeah. So the answers will all be positive.
what do you mean? Yeah, 2 pi over 3. Oh, correct. Yes, because we're not doing, okay, so her question is, why is it not the negative, right? Because we did the inverses. That's when we restricted. We're doing the whole thing now. So we're going from 0 to 2 pi. So we're not going to do the positive and negatives on this. Okay? Okay, any other questions? All right, so listen to me.